Hi, this is Dave Stelzl, and I'm in Buffalo today, and I just finished speaking, actually doing a keynote for Ingram Micro Security and Network Symposium. And I spoke on the power of assessments, or how to create business using assessments. And so I just wanted to give a few minutes on what I spoke about. A number of people came up to me after the keynote and asked questions about it and wanted to know if this thing had been recorded. So it hasn't been, but I'm going to recap just a couple of key points here to help you create business and sell using assessments. So first of all, one of the topics that I started out with, I started out by sharing a number of different assessments that I've done. I've sold a lot of assessments in my life. The first one I held up with sold for about $125,000. It took 2 weeks to deliver. Figure one person worked on it. It took about 80 hours of that person's time, and their burden cost was about $50 per hour. So add all that stuff up, and you come up with, after you've paid commission, maybe $100,000 in gross profit. This is a great investment. However, the second one I held up sold for $36,000, and the customer didn't pay for it, so that had no gross profit. It could have been a great assessment, but it wasn't, because the assessment was not delivered as to the scope, wasn't as it was required. And the reason is, well, I'll go into that in a minute here. And the third one I held up with was delivered, actually it was done for free, it was complimentary. However, it led to $32,000 in remediation work and a $7,000 recurring revenue contract over 3 years, $7,000 per month, and the contract was renewed. The point being, the third one was actually more profitable. The first one sold for more, the last one ended in better revenue, which turned into greater gross profit and more long-term business. So, let's talk about the power of assessment. First of all, companies use these. All kinds of companies use them. You run into them all the time. My lawn care people use assessments. My HVAC person used an assessment to get that contract going. I have a pest control contract. That was done through an assessment. I even recently had a gutter cleaning company do an assessment, which, by the way, I thought was stupid because there's no recurring revenue in the contract for cleaning gutters. However, the first three were worth making the visit to do the assessment to get me bought into a recurring revenue contract, which is very profitable for those companies. And as long as they maintain, there's not a lot for them to do. However, the things they're doing are not things that I can easily do or really easily understand or have time for. So therefore, it turns into recurring revenue. The assessment is complimentary, and it's worth their time to make that investment because the ongoing sale is worth it. Now, there's another point that comes up, and that is, well, what if we're able to charge? Well, charging for an assessment is good. However, how much can you charge? So for instance, the $100,000 or the $125,000 contract that I sold in the first assessment should have resulted in tremendous recurring revenue and remediation projects. It didn't because it was sold wrong. The second one was out of scope. The third one was specific to a scope, but it was complimentary. The first one was a good one, however, only large companies buy that. So when you're dealing with small companies, that last one becomes a really powerful tool. Because like an individual with my lawn care company, I'm not going to pay them to assess my lawn. It's not worth it. But if they come out and they do a complimentary assessment and they can prove to me that they can make my lawn look beautiful for an affordable cost based on what they found, I'll hire them, and certainly I did. So the free contract or the free assessment lends itself to that. Now, let's look at another aspect of this though. Let's say you can go out and charge $3,500. Well, I wouldn't pay that for my lawn. However, a small company might pay that for a risk assessment. But let's look at what we give up. We give up control. Now, we don't always give up control, but many times we do. Let's say, for instance, I offer you a complimentary assessment. And so you say, yes, I come on site and I've scheduled meetings with the owners of the business or executives of the business. I now have license to meet with all of the key people in that organization. And as long as I deliver value, I now have the opportunity to position myself as a trusted advisor. I mean, a real advisor, because I'm actually giving them advice and looking at the risk of their organization, things that they're up against. And this has tremendous value to the organization. And so I can speak to anybody because I've got on the hat of the consultant. I'm not the sales guy. If I come in there to sell a product, they're going to demote me to an IT person or an office manager. But if I'm assessing, I have license to speak to CFOs, presidents, business owners, anybody. because it all affects risk. I can also discover what kinds of projects and initiatives are coming up in the future, anything about their people, their equipment, their applications, everything. All of this information is priceless. And so to give it away complimentary, if I do it right, will lead to remediation and to managed services. This is a good deal. Now, let's say that I charge $2,500 or $3,500 or even $4,500 to do the deal. I go in there and I assess, and I get there. The executive is not available to meet with me, and so I get demoted to someone in the IT organization, and we have our meeting. But I ask to see the executive. The executive doesn't have to see me. They can simply say, well, we paid you to do the assessment, and this is who you're going to meet with. You're going to be working with these guys. My hands are tied. They've paid me. I have to deliver. However, if it's complimentary, I'm giving up $3,000 or $4,000, but I can demand to speak to anybody I want to. Let's say that the business owner says, well, I'm not available to meet. Well, then I'll just simply say, well, I'm not either. Yeah, everything's busy. I'm not able to do it either. Just let me know when you are able. And if they're never able, we haven't wasted any time. We haven't invested anything. We'll just continue to market to them like we would any company. But if they do meet with me, then I can go ahead and meet with all the people I want to meet with. Now, let's say I do that, and I write up the results, and I come up with some really compelling, what I call impact versus likelihood justification. The key thing there being likelihood. What's the likelihood the organization will have a problem, a security problem? And I call them back and I say, hey, I found some things that you need to hear. And the executive says, well, I don't have time to meet with you, so you're going to meet with my IT person. I can simply say, oh, yeah, I'm busy too. I can't meet either. Why don't we do it next week? And if the executive says, well, I'm not free next week, I'll say I'm not either. And I'll just never be free. And I will never give them the deliverable. And you know what? I don't have to, because they didn't pay for it. It's complimentary. It's a trade. I've traded them executive time for my knowledge and ability to assess risk, impact, and likelihood. However, if they've paid me, I have to deliver. If they haven't paid me, I don't have to deliver. And so I control the deal. Now, if we look at a year's worth of business, the net profit and the gross profit required to run a business, how many $2,000 assessments or $3,000 assessments would you have to conduct to make a profitable business? Well, you'd have to do hundreds. It wouldn't be worth it. But let's say we go in and we do one of these complimentary assessments, and we only follow through on the ones where we can get the right audience and we believe there's an opportunity. Well, then we save time and we cut down our sales cost. Now, let's say I go into a company and they're willing to meet with me, but there's only one guy in the company. Let's say I didn't know that, but I call them up to set it up, and I find out, hey, there's only one person, and they only have 2 computers, or something ridiculous like that. I can simply say, well, your company's not a good fit, or we can do that assessment over the phone, and I don't have to invest anything. Why? Because they haven't paid me the $2,500. Every day, I would trade $2,500 for access to all the key executives and the opportunity to find high-impact, high-likelihood systems, ones that would create justification, compelling justification, to create budget that lead to remediation, that move to managed services, which of course is a process of maintaining an acceptable level of risk. This is the power of the assessment. Now, the final thought here is when I go in to do the assessment, I better find something urgent, something that is high likelihood. High impact is all day long, but what about high likelihood? This is what holds up deals. You've got to find high likelihood issues. And there always are high likelihood issues. Issues such as malware that allows somebody outside to access your computer. That's an urgent issue. It needs to be dealt with now. And so if we can find these high likelihood issues, put them into concrete statements in a short deliverable, because it's complimentary, we don't have to write 100 pages, I could write 3. And then I put together a compelling presentation on it to drive the business through to immediate remediation. I can get my engineer over this afternoon to fix this problem. This is urgent. It's like a leaking pipe in a wall. This creates an immediate deal, cuts a 3-month sales cycle down to a few days. And this is just a 10-minute clip of what can be done if we train our organization to sell the complimentary assessment, position it high up, do the discovery, find the urgency, and deliver it in a compelling way. And this builds profitable business. Thanks very much. This is Dave Stelzl, and this again is from the Ingram Micro Network and Security Symposium, done today. Thanks.